Greek tragedy, as we said in class, to understand the mind, the Greek mind, you have to understand Greek tragedy and the format of Greek tragedy, especially Greek tragedy's obsession with fate as a theme. But to quickly recap what we've said about Greek tragedy, tragedy is a form of a play. The theater was very, very important in Greek life. It was going to the theater was an extension of your role as a citizen. We looked at some of the images of the theaters and how they were built. They reflected really the social hierarchy of the city-state. People went to the theater in terms to see festivals. To see festivals. They were very community-oriented. It was very public. Amphitheater seating really encouraged audience participation and really connected the audience to the play. In the theater, there was seats for elites. Wealthier people had better seats. They had better entrances. So the theater really reflected the social hierarchy of the city-state. We're looking at in Athens in particular. The theater, though, is still the theater was so important because of the themes that it explored. Right? It was an extension of their mythology. Right? Mythology was a way that the Greeks grappled with the important questions that they had about where was the origin of the universe, good and evil, the role that gods played in the experience of humans, questions of fate. The theater really was a narrative, a plot-driven, dramatic narrative that explored these themes. So the theater is a natural extension of their sort of their religion. And in fact, the most significant festival of tragedies was the festival each year to honor Dionysus, one of the Olympian gods. The theater also, for the Greeks, tragedies also dealt with relevant topics. Some of them dealt with political issues, like the democracy of Athens. Some of them were historical. They dealt with, like, say, the Trojan War. But they were certainly relevant plot lines. So in many ways, theater for the Greeks played the same role that theater does for us today. We have TV, movies, and plays, but our narrative art, TV, movies, and plays explores important themes and relevant topics in our world. Same way that it did for the Greeks. The festival honoring Dionysus was a competition. Playwrights competed. They were judged. The judges were, if they took bribes, they were put to death. So honor was very much woven into the fabric of this competition. The playwrights were competing for the honor of being the best playwright, not for prize money. There was huge prestige to win. And it's appropriate to use the term arete here, again, cultivation of excellence. Remember, the Greeks loved competition because it brought out the best in everybody. So just as the Olympics were a valuable experience for bringing out the best of people in competition, so was the Festival of Dionysus. Now, the key thing to know about tragedies is that they have a very specific form. The Greeks believed very strongly in the role of fate in people's lives. And in tragedies, what ends up happening with characters is, tragic characters, is that they have a flaw, some sort of a inherent problem, or they make a decision, or they either have a characteristic or take an action that is going to bring about their own downfall. In other words, the suffering in the play is brought about by the person doing the suffering. It's not a case of bad luck or just horrible things happening. And it's also not the case that a horrible person gets their comeuppance. It has to be some kind of a heroic figure who is a built-in flaw. And circumstances lead to a reversal of their good fortune so that they end up suffering because of it. And this speaks very much to the idea that the Greeks had about fate, that sometimes you just simply couldn't escape your fate. Of the two plays that we're going to look at, Medea and Oedipus both explore the idea of bad decisions that made for good reasons that backfire, or, in the case of Oedipus, the question of fate and inability to escape your fate. Again, remember, this is crucial because the Greeks really believed in the role of fate. Remember, think about the oracles, consulting oracles for prophecies. So the tragic form is very important. Again, a tragedy in the Greek view is not something that's just bad luck, but rather something more specific. And Aristotle's definition of tragedy is what we'll work with to really get at that. So when we think about tragedy, when we think about the specific form of a tragedy, both the play and the plot of the play, as well as the structure of the play, the actors in the chorus. Think about the idea that a festival was comprised of a cycle of tragedies, 3 tragedies and 1 comedy. Think about how the experience of going to the theater was a reflection of the social structure and social hierarchy of the city-states at the time. Think about how the festivals of honoring Dionysus, the tragedy festivals, were competitions. And think about how they really explored important themes and questions, and as such, it was really an extension of mythology.